Dedue, Dimitri's closest friend and retainer in Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Let me just cut to the meat of this right away. This dude is awesome. I bet in the post-war Foltland's dictionary, this man's mug is plastered next to the definition of Chad. Dedue is a criminally underrated character in 3 Houses, and by the end of this video, I'll convey how this dude's not only one of the most loyal characters I've seen in fiction, but how his mental strength is overlooked by many. I doubt I need to tell you this, but for those who are either unfamiliar with 3 Houses or just a bit rusty on lore, Dedue is a man from Dusker. It's a lone peninsula at the northeast of Fargus, and was tragically burnt to the ground. Dusker and its people were scapegoats, unjustly blamed for the assassination of Fargus' King Lambert. These events are collectively referred to in Foltland history as the Tragedy of Dusker, and Dedue was among the few survivors, personally saved by a teenage Prince Dimitri himself. Dimitri's kindness and understanding towards Dusker's situation is the basis of Dedue's immense respect and loyalty towards him. 3 Houses' narrative portrayed Dedue in a typical fashion of being extremely loyal and attentive to Dimitri's every need. I'd be doing their dynamic a huge disservice by claiming the depth of this character ends there, as a surface level glance at their relationship could easily come to the conclusion of him just being a big, tough, stoic, quiet, and loyal dude with a common tragic backstory. Dedue's certainly much more than that, and it's not just Azure Moon that provides strong examples of his most impressive traits. Side note, this analysis will only cover 3 Houses, as per usual with me. 3 Hopes will not be mentioned. Yes, I know it provides additional insights into Foltland's characters, but I still haven't played it yet, because I can never find time for it. Yes, I know I can just watch cutscenes on YouTube, but I want to watch them on my own while I play, so don't spoil me in the comments, please. Anyway, Dedue. What makes him so special? Well, instead of boring you with the usual laundry list of generic things to gush about, let's just focus on 2 powerful qualities of his that aren't explored enough, in my opinion. 1, the true depths of his loyalty, both the good and ugly aspects of it, and 2, Dedue's admirable mental fortitude in response to his life and circumstances within his character arc. Let's start with the latter. If you're familiar with some of my past essays, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of Arthur K.M. Weiland's perspective on identifying character arcs. If you don't remember, I don't blame you. Last time I made a video was nearly half a fucking year ago, sorry. Weiland identifies character arcs into 3 distinctive categories: the positive change arc, the negative change arc, and finally, the flat character arc. This may seem hard to believe, but I interpret Dedue's characterization as a flat character arc. A flat arc, in a more summarized and easier to digest definition, is when a character already begins the story as a static and a whole person who's already developed. This can easily be misunderstood as the character lacking any depth and further development. No, flat arc characters go through 2 main conflicts. Their journey challenges their beliefs, and a struggle is to stay true to their morals that they uphold as an already complete person. Alright, I'm gonna cut off pre-recorded madness right here. So, you could make a case for the positive change arc for Dedue. Support conversations like Byleth reveal personal struggles of his, though Byleth's more or less just there to let the characters talk to themselves to express their internal conflicts to a limited degree. But Mercedes' conversations with him go more into how little Dedue cares for himself, as he's perplexed as to why someone would be interested in his ruined country and their culture, people the world openly disrespects, especially the people of Fargus, who were directly affected by the tragedy. Conversations like hers and Byleth help him develop into someone who values his own life more. However, I won't go too deep into that today, since that deals with mercy. I need to save that for another video. Regardless, I still say he's a flat arc character, mainly because his role in other character arcs is largely to the benefit of positively influencing their lives. Dimitri, for example, can be a mix of both a positive and negative arc in this context. I've already discussed this at length in his own dedicated videos. I'll link them at the end of this one. But if a character with strong morals lose their internal battle with themselves, they'll devolve into something far worse than who they started off as, the negative arc. A positive change is someone who develops from negative traits throughout their arc. Dedue, despite his struggles with prejudice from people of Foltland, and a past that could give him plenty of justification to be bitter towards those who wronged his people, he remains so strong as to not fall prey to that negativity. As someone who personally faces prejudice for the color of his skin, I can relate to someone heavily like Dedue. The temptation is strong to fight fire with fire, but it's never the answer. And Dedue's dialogue in certain supports represents how mature he is about his position in Foltland society. A flat character's conflict usually comes with their stance in the world, and they're usually individual. No. Why the fuck did I put usually twice in one sentence? And they're often the individuals of influence to those around them, as opposed to being the target of influence and change themselves. Dimitri, for example, is usually angry in Dedue's place for how people treat him and other Dusker people, but Dedue's iron stance on being the bigger man solidifies him as the voice of reason, and this keeps Dimitri grounded enough to not do anything rash in his efforts to clear Dusker's name. Dedue at least understood where the misplaced discrimination came from, despite the egregious nature of the behavior. Ingrid, a character often criticized in the community for her treatment of Dedue and views on Dusker, is a huge example of Dedue's role as a flat character. We often focus way too much on Ingrid's words and actions to realize the true point of their dynamic. For Dedue to passively help her change her perspective, despite it not being his intention, in a healthy manner, instead of merely shunning and hating her for her ignorance and retaliation. Dedue is far more understanding than he's given credit for. He's aware of the pain Fargus went through by losing their king, that despite not knowing the full truth of the tragedy himself, he understood the nuances of the situation better than anyone. Dedue was mature enough to not see everything in black and white. He knows fighting back won't end the unjust discrimination. He acts instead by slowly changing those around him, and in the most simple way, being himself. He recalls the people of Fargus throwing stones, spitting on his people, and much more obscenities. But by being the kind and loyal person he was, and not holding a grudge, he shattered the false perception of his people to those around him. Most notably Ingrid, who held the strongest, most irrational fear of him in the army because of what she lost in Dusker. Not just her king, but her fiance Glenn, Felix's brother. The fact that he was the perfect foil for Ingrid makes their conversations more impactful. Instead of meeting the discrimination at the same level of vitriol, he instead killed it with kindness, basically. Not exactly the most realistic outcome when framing it from the perspective of real-world discourse, but one, this is fiction, and two, being the bigger person is still always the better solution, regardless of the outcome, and Dedue teaches this with his actions, instead of his words. He helped her grow when he had every right not to. He didn't even need to say anything profound or give some generic speech with fluffy words devoid of impact. He just sat back, allowing Ingrid to dismantle herself and realize on her own about her unacceptable behavior. It was Dedue playing his role correctly as a character with a flat arc. The B support was there to show that she wasn't inherently a bad person, just a misguided one who actually possessed the capacity to undergo introspection and change. And Dedue, with his resolute status as a developed person, was the perfect choice to help Ingrid see the nuances in the tragedy. Dedue's developments with Ingrid, compiled with many other examples that I won't waste more time on, shows just how mentally powerful and inspiring he is. By just simply staying true to oneself and their end goal, he remains powerful and composed even amongst all the chaos and discourse around him. Which is a nice segue into why his loyalty towards Dimitri is so beautifully executed. It's a complex loyalty that shows both the positive and negative traits of Dedue, which the latter further humanizes him. Dedue wouldn't even be the man he was without Dimitri's intervention. Without Dimitri putting his life at risk by defending him during Dusker's unjust destruction, Dedue may not have ever been introduced to the level of compassion that influenced him in the present. Dimitri, to Dedue, represented everything that was still right about the world. So he threw his entire weight behind the prince and his goals. Being a bitter man with a vendetta against those who destroyed his life would be no help to assisting his closest friend to achieve his goals. Dedue's loyalty ran so deep that it caused him to place Dimitri on a pedestal, unable to see himself being worthy of his friendship. Obviously, this hurt Dimitri, who did everything from teaching Dedue how to read and write to teaching the culture's mannerisms. Dimitri always viewed Dedue as his best friend, so to know that Dedue couldn't feel worthy of having the feeling be mutual stinged. But that only strengthened their bond as it was resolved in their A support. But you see, Dedue fell into the trap of being loyal to a fault. I used to hold the stance that Dedue being absent for half of Azure Moon was a missed opportunity, feeling that he was more worthy than Byleth to help Dimitri return to his senses after going insane. To a degree, I still hold that opinion a little bit, but for the most part now, I had to change my stance on that. Why? Because narratively speaking, that wasn't Dedue's job. Dedue shows time and time again during the different routes of the game that despite Dimitri's descent into madness, he supported him no matter what. Crimson Flower certainly shows a branch in the timeline where if Dedue was a constant presence in his life, he'd at least be that constant support that helps mellow out the vengeful king. But Dimitri still maintained a certain degree of bloodlust. Crimson Flower just did a terrible job at showing this, and Dedue was too devout to Dimitri's mission to stop him. The fact that Dedue resorted to using crest stones, more morphing even himself into a demonic beast, and caused Dimitri of all people to scold him, speaks volumes for Dedue's undying loyalty towards his friend. Calling him by name, as opposed to his usual "Your Highness" before his final moments as a sane man, showed without telling us how Dedue was willing to do anything to see Dimitri win. I don't have background footage for this, sorry, but this Chad stormed Inbar alone and non-Azure roots to carry out Dimitri's vendetta in his place. My homie pulled up ready to carve Edelgard into pieces for a dead Dimitri, to terminate her with extreme prejudice. My Mega Man viewers will get that reference. I'm convinced if Dimitri, in his psycho state, ordered Dedue to slaughter anyone he asked, regardless of who it was, he'd do it.
Dedue, devour that little girl.
Very well, Your Highness. Nah, that's fucked up even for me, man. What in the actual shit? Why did I write that? Point is, Dedue's passive and supportive nature wouldn't be the right foil for Dimitri. Sure, true friends should slap some sense into each other whenever one or the other goes off the rails, but because of what Dimitri did for Dedue, Dimitri is more or less his role model. Even in his deranged state, Dedue knew before Dimitri even flew off the handle in the story that Dimitri's hatred ran deep. They both suffered and knew how each other felt, but he trusts his best friend's judgment, even during times when it's clearly wrong. He's a ride or die friend. And depending on where you live in our world, you see that type of dynamic duo often. And not in the most savory of ways. And that's what helps Dedue feel real. He's got believable flaws, but strong and admirable qualities. Under the right circumstances, this man can change suddenly like the wind. Calm and kind in one moment, then the next, resolved to bulldoze anything in his friend's way with no hesitation, mercy, or remorse. Dedue is the embodiment of being a monster when needed. To assert himself as a feared guardian that friggin' waits for his homies and his king. But he quickly returns to that stoic, gentle giant to be the rock, setting a positive example in his own little way for his friends. And that's why he's Fire Emblem's most underrated Chad. I appreciate y'all listening. If you enjoyed this little essay, please like the video to support the channel. Yeah, sorry for the dip again. My big project on my Magna Zero channel is finally finished, so I'll be returning to regular content on here very soon. I'll be continuing editing the Fire Emblem 4 full story review, but if y'all want to see more small essays like this during the interim, just let me know. If you'd like to hear an extensive analysis on Dimitri's character arc, I've made 2 videos about that. You can watch that here. But yeah, peace, and stay chill, y'all.